Episode 8 of No Huddle. I'm excited to do this. We're going to talk the main slate for week 5 NFL. We're going to talk about from a DFS perspective, bets perspective, you name it. I will also say we're recording this on Wednesday night. We got a long way to go till Sunday. There's going to be a lot of changes. So take a look at the data and the information that's out there. Our two favorites are Neil and Debro, who both put out amazing work on the main slate. Debro does an amazing article called The Primer. Neil also writes up a game by game article. Highly recommend those for deep thoughts and data looks. But we want to talk just from a high level, what stands out to us as we early in the week kind of pull together our thoughts. Justin, I want to call out, I know you hate when I do this. We are sadly 22% of the way done with the NFL regular season. I know. 4 out of 18 weeks done. It is brutal. We're going into game 5. How has the NFL season gone for you so far?
It's been good. My fantasy teams are in a great spot.
Yeah.
DFS has been a little up and down.
Yeah.
I've been
As it always
crushing,
is.
yeah, as it always is. I've been crushing my bets. I've been doing
Yes,
really
you
good
have.
betting. So I've been crushing my bets. Look to continue that this week.
I love that. You just finished a couple hours ago a show that I highly recommend that I was on last week called Cage Match with Fantasy Points with Neil and Jake Tribby. Tell me a little bit about the show and your research and strategy that you put together for that show.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun doing that show with them. It's a really fun watch, really cool thing that they do. Whoever wins, you get to donate $100 to a charity of your choice.
Love
So
that.
just really cool thing that they do over there. I advise checking that out. I just did some quick research on it going into that. Something I kind of wanted to do is just kind of see what the chalk plays were going to be for that
Yeah.
week. And since it's only going to be three of us, if I could go ahead and draft first and get those chalk plays out of the way and then kind of go from there. And I really like the lineup that I ended up on. You want me to run it by you real quick?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah, so I got Gene Daniels at quarterback and then Chuba Hubbard and Jordan
Yes.
Mason. And then I went triple running back. I went Kyron Williams in the flex.
Yeah.
Colts D against Jacksonville. And then I have Tucker Kraft and Dontavian Wicks as my value plays.
Yeah.
And then I have Terry McLaurin and Tutu Atwell. I had to go Tutu Atwell because Neil took Jordan Whittington.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that let's start with that Packers and Rams game then. An over under of 48 and a half. We saw the shootout that the Packers had last week. Jordan Love looks great. We know that the Rams D is not good this year. I think I agree with you. That seems like a great opportunity to play that game. And there's some good value plays now with Christian Watson out and Dontavian Wicks being almost in a smash spot. We also saw Tucker Kraft have a great game, and the Rams have not been good against tight ends either. Tucker Kraft's ownership is already coming in at 25+%. Dontavian Wicks is at 15%. I wouldn't be surprised if that creeps up. That obviously seems like a good game that you want to stack from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at their last game, there was 22 targets between Wicks and Tucker Kraft. I mean, and at those prices, yeah, give me all of it. I'll take that, especially with Christian Watson out and they're playing against the Rams.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Rams, the one thing that scares me is 2 weeks ago, they played a little bit slow. The losing Cup and Puka, obviously, they're kind of figuring out who their offense is, and they're utilizing Kyron a ton as they should, Kyron Williams as they should. And they were running a little bit slow. Last week against the Bears, I actually saw them pick up their tempo a decent amount. And so I'm less scared than I was previously about the Rams just kind of running out the clock. They're at home. They're still going to utilize Kyron Williams a ton. I could see this being a little bit slow, but the Packers run and gun, and Jordan Love slings it. So I don't hate stacking that game at all.
I really see that we've kind of discussed this before. I really see this week as a three running back type week. Like kind of
Yeah.
send up, get your for sure points there. in
Yeah.
those running back spots, and then kind of mix and match your wide receiver spots.
Yeah, Debro literally as we were jumping on, he texted me that exact same thought that he felt like that this was a 3 running back spot. I talked about it in when I did the cage match last week. You know, with the offenses being a little bit clunky to start the season and some lower over unders, I think that makes total sense, right? Lock in your points, lock in your opportunity with running backs, and then take a couple stands and a couple iffy shots on receivers. But I certainly don't mind grabbing 3 running backs, including the flex. And speaking of, I think Josh Jacobs is in an absolute smash spot.
I agree.
Yes, they're on the road, but the Rams' rush defense is almost non-existent. They are second worst in the league in stuff rate, and I think Josh Jacobs is in a great spot.
In my early build, first build, I have 26% Josh Jacobs so far.
I think that's great. What other games stick out to you as being really good opportunities? We have the
Do you
Cardinals
want
at
me
the 49ers.
you want me to share my screen and kind of go through it?
Yeah, let's do that. All right, I'll add
Good.
that. Here we go.
All right, cool. So what I did here, so what I already did before we got on this episode, went through every single game, went one by one, filtered every single game, then I went ahead and made my player pool. Ended up with 76 players. Did the mini max, the 50 cent, 150 entry contest. Ran it already. Did the win projection. So we already got a good idea of what we're going to be looking at. Something I just kind of want to show everybody that's watching is just kind of the exposures that it's given me this early in the week. Kind of to what I was saying. I think it's a 3 running back week. Which running backs you want? I would mix and match. I don't love that it's giving me this much Stevenson. I think it's just
That's what
because
stuck out to me too.
they have such a high projection for him. I'm gonna put 15.3 instead of 17.3.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We, if you've been on Twitter, you've probably heard some of the coach speak today. Again, this is Wednesday. The question was posed: if has there been any conversation about starting Antonio Gibson because Stevenson has fumbled now 4 weeks in a row?
Mm-hmm.
His response was not confirming it, certainly, but he stated that they have discussed it, that they chat as a team that ball security equals job security, i.e., if you do not fumble, then you will keep your job. You know, obviously that's a little bit of a cheesy line that they like to use, but he followed that up by saying we can't say that and then keep Stevenson in who's fumbling 4 times in 4 weeks, right? So I think he's a big question mark. I think his matchup is fantastic. His ownership is probably going to be low. I think he's a good GPP play in the sense that this could be a get right spot, or it could be a spot where Antonio Gibson gets more of the share, and that's a concern, obviously.
Yeah, I think I'll end up coming down on this. Obviously, I'm gonna boost this down, maybe boost Gibson up a little bit just so all my bases are covered, or I might just avoid it altogether. I mean, it's not like the Pats, are must have in any capacity at this point. But yeah, just kind
That
of show.
ownership of 20% plus, that seems a little bit high. I would be surprised if he comes that high.
Yeah, but just to kind of show the listeners and viewers a kind of overview of what the Sims are kind of spitting out for me this early in the week. T-Law being my top stack against Indy. I don't hate that.
No, I like it.
I kind of like playing Indy's D against Jacksonville as well, just because Jacksonville hasn't looked that great this early in the season. But this could be a really good get right spot, especially with how Indy's past defense has been recently.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that as well. In my early look, that looked like a good target spot. Your second quarterback on that list is one I want to call out. We know that the Commanders' pass defense is almost non-existent. I missed a call from Washington earlier today. I was wondering if they were calling me to get on the field. But it is, the problem with that is playing the Browns passing offense is a tough one. I love Amari Cooper from a talent perspective. I know you love Jerry Jeudy from a talent perspective. Deshaun Watson had it at some point. Do you feel like you will keep this as a potential stack, or what are you thinking?
No, I know for a fact I won't keep this.
Yeah,
I'll boost
yeah,
him. I'll get him down to probably around 8%. I'll probably cut this in half.
yeah,
I do
yeah,
like Jordan Love. I like Joe Burrow. I like Brock Purdy.
yeah.
And I obviously like Jake Daniels. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think those 5 guys will be my 5 quarterbacks for the week.
Can you sort it by flagship ownership two to the right there on your projection? My projection, yeah. I'm just curious what that ownership looks like, and if there's like a sub 10% quarterback that I would consider playing. I think what you have of Trevor Lawrence at 5-ish% ownership as being like a really good sneaky spot.
Yeah,
Colts
to get
pass
some
defense is
leverage.
not good. They play fast. Potential get right spot for Trevor Lawrence and the Jags playing at home. I don't hate it at all.
And Jaden Daniels is only going to be 3%. I'm going to play 20.
That seems surprising.
I'm going to play 20 if that's the case.
I guess people are concerned about the Browns defense, which I get, but they're at home. Jaden Daniels looks amazing. And if you told me on Monday morning that Jaden Daniels ran in 2 touchdowns and was the nuts and was the optimal quarterback play, there would be zero surprise on my face.
Yeah, Ramondre's coming in at 23.8 flagship.
Seems high.
Seems high. And like I said, once we get closer to kickoff and everything, all this stuff will
Yeah.
change. All our ownerships will change. So this is obviously a very early look.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think what's your typical DFS weekly play? I think we talked about it maybe a little bit on our showdown episode. What's your typical main slate play for DFS?
Yeah, so here I'll stop sharing this just so I can see the face. Yeah, what I usually do for main slates, especially if I like the slate, I like this week's slate, is I do the mini max 50 cent.
Mhm.
I do that one. I always try to take it down. I don't quite ball out and go the $20 max entry and chase down the millie. I'm not quite
Yeah.
there yet, but I do it with the 50 cent. It's a lot of fun. I like taking the 150 max entries, so I
Yeah.
enjoy doing it. I do the $20 or not the $20, the 20 max entry contest where there's $1, $2, $3.
Love that.
I usually do all of them. I find them to be fun. I usually have a few lineups that make a good run for the money.
Yeah.
And then I do a good bit of like single entry and 3 max entry, and I usually hand build those. And there's been weeks where I hand build 20 different lineups if I like really feel like I'm dialed in. I see.
Love that. Yeah. Yeah, I think so I'm off to Vegas tomorrow where I cannot enter DFS. And Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there's a wedding and activities and whatnot. We're going to come back on Saturday night, so I'm going to still have Saturday night to build. I'm a little on the fence right now of if I'm going to do my
Hey, hey,
typical
hey,
150.
I'm so sorry, but just woke up. I can take
No,
it.
no worries. Go for it. I'll continue to riff for a minute.
Okay.
I was just saying, so I don't know if I'm going to run typically on a NFL Sunday. I run 50 to 150 depending on what I'm playing lineups. But I'm going to be a little out of pocket, so I might just do a couple of high dollar entries and give it a go. I typically like to play mid dollar entries, if you will, $20, $50, $100. Maybe I'll test my luck at a couple higher dollars this week. Looking at the slate, we talk a little bit of SaberSim as they're primarily the top tool that we like to use for lineup building. We got a couple DMs last week about promo codes that we have, things like that. We haven't asked SaberSim yet for a promo code, but if you do want a promo code, shoot us a DM, either myself or the podcast or whatnot, and we'll reach out to SaberSim and probably get a promo code. I know they do that often for shows who are chatting about it. So let us know and we can look into that. The other element that I like to use a lot from a tool perspective is Fantasy Points. I think they put out amazing data They have charters on their end, and they put out a lot of really great information. So I utilize them on my day-to-day research, and highly recommend them. Same goes there. If you want a promo code, I'm sure we can probably arrange something there. I want to talk a little bit about Trey Sermon and the Colts backfield. At this point in time, I'm guessing and going to build my lineups as if Jonathan Taylor is going to be out. He has a a medium severity high ankle sprain. What does that mean, right? A high ankle sprain typically keeps a running back out for 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the severity. They are keeping the door open that he could actually play this week. I don't buy it. I think Trey Sermon is probably going to get the start, and he's going to get the workload. There's no one else that they really trust in there right now. Trey Sermon looked really good in his opportunities that he got last year. I would have no hesitation playing him. I know he's a little bit on the higher price side compared to some of the backup running backs who became starters, like a Cam Akers. At his price point and his ownership, I'm still okay with him being a really good play. Justin, I hear you coming back. How you doing? Oh, sorry. So you're closing it. I didn't have video up.
No, I'm back. Had to get him a bottle of milk.
There you
He's
go.
in a new crib for the first time tonight, so we're kind of keeping a close eye on him. But yeah, I just gave him a bottle of milk. He might get back up. If he gets back up, I might have to just call it. But
You do your thing. We're gonna call it, early. We're early in the week, so we'll do a little quick look. And then actually for the listeners and viewers, Justin and I were toying around with the idea of maybe there's the London game this week, which is a little bit early for us. It would be, a 6:30 game, but both Justin and I have kids. We're up on the early side. Maybe we'll see if we can do a quick live thing, maybe on Twitter Spaces or something like that. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
I'd
So if
love
you
that.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. We'll, maybe we have some showdown lineups that we build the night before and live sweat them. Why not?
That'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
The one thing that I was talking about, which you guys may have covered in Cage Match, is how do you feel about the Colts backfield? I'm building and projecting that Jonathan Taylor is going to be out, and I think Trey Sermon at 5,700 is a really good play. His ownership projection is really low because simply people don't know, but I imagine he'll be 20% or so.
Oh, more.
5,700 is, yeah, 5,700 though is a little bit more, right? Like we saw
Is he
Roshan
really
Johnson last week at
5,700?
41. Yeah, he's 5,700. They were prepared.
Wow, that's a lot more than I was expecting. I was expecting like 4,700.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I'm thinking of Cam Akers the last couple of weeks, who has been, price sub 5K and low 5K, and Roshan, who was at 4,100. These backup running backs have traditionally been priced pretty low, but Trey Sermon was already there at 5,700.
Yeah, it seems
Let's
like
say he plays. What do you?
they did that by design.
Yeah, well, and I think depending on when pricing came out, I think it was known that Jonathan Taylor got hurt mid-game, and they didn't want huge ownership, which I appreciate. I like a little strategy there.
Let me actually look.
The Jags rush defense, I referenced while you were out too, Justin, that I like to utilize fantasy points as really good data. They have a stuff rate that I like to reference with running backs a lot. The Jags rush defense is actually pretty good at the fifth highest stuff rate so far on the season. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be an easy matchup. We saw Cam Akers actually be really chalky against the
Mhm.
Jags at maybe in the fours or maybe low fives, and he failed. I think he got a lucky touchdown. I'm thinking of
I
the week
remember that.
before.
Yeah, he did get a lucky touchdown.
Yeah, and then the Bills actually, we did see that 3 touchdown game from James Cook, I think it was. Actually, no, that
Your boy was on that.
I remember that. That was great. Yeah, you had a prop of James Cook 3 touchdowns, which was great. James Cook against the Jags, about 100 total yards and a touchdown. But he was held on the rushing standpoint, so only 11 rushes and 39 yards. 3.5 rushes per carry. So, maybe there's something there. Week 1, the Jags played the Dolphins, and I do remember that Achane struggled as well. 10 rushes, 24 yards. Jeff Wilson was a little non-existent. Achane did get a lot of receiving work. James Cook got some receiving work. Week 2 against the Browns, not really a rushing offense I like to look at, but Jerome Ford did go 7 for 64. So a little bit of the data, a little bit up in the air, but certainly holding good running backs to some low yards per carry. Maybe the more I think about it, there's a little bit more validity to fading Trey Sermon or potentially being under the field at 5,700.
I think an angle to look at that game as well is if AR doesn't play, Joe Flacco is full steam
Yeah,
ahead.
good
Give
point.
me Adonai and Mitchell with him.
Yeah,
Give me Michael Pittman with him.
yeah,
Give me all those stacks.
yeah. Yeah, I'm really curious what we're gonna see. My assumption is that Anthony Richardson is gonna start and play. Which, hey, do you have any interest in that at essentially no ownership against the Jags
He's pretty
pass D,
cheap
which has
too.
been pretty bad?
He's pretty cheap too.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely
Pittman,
interested.
yeah, we saw Pittman do some decent work when Anthony Richardson was still in last week, and we've seen a couple highlights of Adonai Mitchell barely being missed on long, deep throws, especially in week 1. I think there was 2 of them. And to my point earlier on Jaden Daniels, you tell me on Monday morning that Jaden Daniels rushes in 2 touchdowns, I'm not too surprised. You tell me that Anthony Richardson rushed in 2 touchdowns on Monday morning, also not surprised.
Nope. Especially at that price point, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and no ownership. Right now his projections at 0.16% ownership.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
Do you, in something big like the mini max, do you stack every one of your QBs, or somebody like Anthony Richardson would you consider unstacked?
Yeah, I don't always stack. I like to stack, especially
Yeah.
if it's a passing quarterback. But the only time I won't, I'll send somebody by themselves if it's someone like AR, Anthony Richardson,
Yeah.
Justin Fields, Jaden
Yeah.
Daniels.
Yeah.
Even though I have stacked Jaden Daniels every single week with Terry McLaurin.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean those guys that just have legitimate rushing upside, Josh Allen. Um, the guys that could just rush in 2 or 3 touchdowns any given week. Yeah, like it's okay to run those guys out there naked.
Yeah. I agree. Both you and I were all over Justin Fields last week, and we saw that huge upside 30-point fantasy game. I mean, just insane. I wouldn't be surprised. And look, we got to look into what the injury news is later in the week. I would not be surprised if Anthony Richardson ends up having a really good game here.
Totally.
I think something that, and we'll call this a little bit early, but I think something that stands out to me is ownership and the importance of fading bad chalk, if you will. And
Yeah.
so I just sorted by all players' ownership. Let me share my screen actually, make this a little bit easier. I'm curious off the top of your head, what looks like bad chalk to you? And I'll call out a couple on my end too.
Let me look it up right now. Go to all clear.
Oh shoot. Am I sharing my showdown screen?
1 second. I'm looking at say yeah, you are.
Okay, let me switch that around. Actually, I'll cancel that out. Apologies, everyone. There we go. Okay. I sorted it by ownership for the entire slate. What stands out to you here?
Okay. So we're trying to identify some bad chalk. I'm not gonna give Ramondre Stevenson too much attention. We both think he won't be this
Yeah.
high owned going into the
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let me see.
I'm kind of surprised that Javante Williams is so high. Did I miss injury news on Jaleel today or anything
Yeah,
like that?
he's not even in the player pool. I took him out.
I saw that.
Yeah, and he's at 23%. That's bad chalk in my opinion. Like, I'm not. I'm
Is
not
it
gonna.
just a matchup that I'm a
I
little
mean,
bit early in my research this week? I realize it's a good matchup, but I'm
even if he
surprised.
does have a good game, what's that look like? 15 fantasy
Yeah,
points?
yeah, I think that's yeah, if that.
Yeah, I mean, you can find 15 fantasy points a lot of other places.
Yeah. One that stands out to me, and I know you grabbed him in cage match, especially in a 3-man. I don't think any the chalk matters at all. Obviously, you guys are you're and the way that cage match is done, only one player can be drafted to one team. So obviously no one's gonna have him. But 28% for a tight end, I think in general is a little bit much. And a guy like Tucker Kraft, who we saw have a great game last week, but they were playing in this up tempo catch up time, and Tucker Kraft was a big beneficiary of that. I don't mind taking some looks at other tight ends, and I get that 3,500 is good. He'll probably be in my player pool, but that's a little high in my mind.
Yeah, if he ends up coming in at like 35% ownership, it's not a bad idea to like just, cut him off at like 10, 15, and then
Yeah.
use that other 15% ownership elsewhere and get different.
Yeah, I'll have to look at the Rams defense against tight ends. If I recall, I think they've played actually pretty decently against tight ends, but I'll have to get back to that. What else from a defensive standpoint, I get it. 2,900 against the Raiders, who look like they're in shambles right now. But at the same time, I've talked about this before. Kickers are fluky in terms of points scored. So are defenses, right? They're a little bit unpredictable. And a chalk defense, regardless of price, isn't necessarily the play that you want in large GPPs. Cash games certainly, smaller single entries fine. Large GPP, I think you steer away from defensive chalk.
Yeah, I totally agree. The only way I would kind of do a little bit of defensive chalk is the Broncos this week. They're playing against the Raiders, who have the lowest team total
Yeah,
on the slate this week, and the
yeah,
Broncos
I get
D.
it.
The Broncos D is pretty affordable this week. So when I say play a chalk defense, I'm not saying play 100%, 75%, 50% of your lineups is one defense. I'm saying
Yeah.
like if they're going to be 10%, maybe get them 20%, just so you have that variance.
Yeah, and the Broncos are at home, so I get it. It makes sense. The other game that I think is a really fun game, which I'm not seeing pop off in ownership, is this game right here, the Bills at Houston, which Houston's pass defense has looked beatable in sometimes, and the Bills offense we know can really hum. Let me take a look at these ownerships from the Texans at home. I mean, if this is accurate, this might be one of my favorite sneaky stacks. And I get that stacking the Texans is going to be a little bit pricey with Nico at 7,700. So maybe it's more doable if value opens up, if we get more of the Trey Sermon types, if you will.
Not
Although
a
you're going to need cheaper
single player projected for more than 8% ownership.
in this entire game. Yeah, this is an interesting game.
You're definitely right. See, this is why you're good.
Look, it's the name of the game, right? Finding spots. I hate to say it, there's great content out there, and I named a few, Neil and Debro and others. And there is also other content that is kind of what I would call groupthink, if you will, where everyone just calls out the same plays, right? There's minimal research done. Everyone calls out the same plays. And then sadly, a lot of the listeners end up following that exact same, play and script and whatnot. And you end up with huge ownerships on games like the Packers and Rams, which I totally agree with that is a good game. But in comparison, like let's see a little ownership here. And if we're not going to, then I'm going to be above the field on it.
Totally. I really like that call. I'm really glad that you brought that game to my attention and I was able to look at how underowned it's going to be. I'm definitely going to boost my ownerships for that game.
Love that. The other one which I see is seeing a little bit of ownership from a Derrick Henry standpoint because we just saw what he did in prime time and Jamar Chase, similar story. Everything else looks fairly low. And again, a little bit pricier standpoint, especially on the Lamar Jackson side and Raven side and whatnot. But I don't hate stacking this game as well. Like a Lamar Jackson, maybe a Zay Flowers, if we think this could finally be his week, plus a Jamar Chase. Like that's an expensive stack, an expensive game stack, but one that could be, between the three of them, we could see 75 plus points from them.
Yeah, I think that would be an awesome three stack. Like you said, it's expensive, but
Yeah.
it could also really pop off if you went Burrow, Chase, followed back with Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's fair too.
It's a fun one.
Yeah, what was that?
That's just a fun one. That'd be a fun
Yeah.
lineup to try and build around.
And a really fun game to watch too.
Yeah.
So to that point, if we are potentially considering some of the more expensive stacks, we're going to need some of the value plays. So I just sorted these by best values. Unfortunately, we have a couple quarterbacks at the top of the list. Jordan Mason at 7,400 popping off as one of the best values is wild. I get that they're at home and touchdown favorites, and I think he's a smash play. There's, I think, a world where he doesn't score a touchdown now that the Niners are fully healthy. And sure, maybe he gets 90 total yards and still has a good game and a couple passes and whatnot. We might still only see 12 to 13, 14 points. I might be under the field on this number here.
I don't hate that take at all. The lineups that spit out for me, just because we're so early in the week, it spit out a ton of ownership scoring for me. But yeah, I definitely agree with that take. It's definitely a spot to get different in.
And as I look through the rest of the values, value is just really tough so far this
Tucker
week.
Kraft is a huge value this week.
Yeah, I see now why his ownership is going to be so high. Chuba's a really interesting one. He should be priced in the mid to high sixes, and he's just not.
Yeah, I had Chuba and Tucker Kraft in my lineup with me.
Yeah. We're gonna need some value to open up if we do want to play some of those stacks. What are you going to do with DeAndre Swift this week? He looked fantastic against, again, the Rams rush defense, which is poor. Are you chasing that, or do you think that was a fluky 1 week thing?
No, I mean he's worth playing this week, especially against Carolina. That game could end up being a little frisky.
I like the Bears from a potential standpoint, and you and I played a few of the Bears stacks last week. It didn't pan out, I think, mainly because two reasons. The Rams got to the red zone on 3 different occasions and settled for field goals on 3 different times. If those turn into, let's say, 2 of them turn into touchdowns, the Bears then go into a pass-heavy mode similar to what we saw 2 weeks ago, and Caleb could end up throwing 40 plus times and end up having a much better game than he had. So, to your point, it's a little game script dependent, but if this ends up being a little bit of a shootout, I wouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And unfortunately, last week we were just on the wrong fair running back.
Yeah, exactly. I think this has been a fun early look. Again, we're Wednesday. There's going to be a lot more information come out. There's going to be a lot more data and research and whatnot come out. How do you feel about this? Anything else you want to touch on?
The only other thing I would touch on as far as the value plays goes is some of those Rams receivers with so many injuries there.
Yeah.
You just got to find those injuries and the guys that are going to be stepping in for those guys.
Yeah.
Like he was just saying, it's extremely early in the week still. We don't have the best look quite yet, but we wanted to go ahead and get on here and give something of an episode for an early look on this slate with him going to Vegas and whatnot. But yeah, man, I hope people found this informative.
Yeah, I love it. I think this was fun. It was good for me. It was early in my week of research. I'm gonna, instead of doing so much, I'll probably be in the hotel room a little bit and building out lineups. So this has been helpful. So appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. Like I said, I'll post on Twitter if we end up deciding to do the early Sunday game live on Twitter. So stay tuned on that. And appreciate the views and the listen. I'm Drew. He's Justin, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for stopping by.